Happy election day, Gary. You've turned out in style. I love it. A little bit of Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA t-shirt, if nobody can see him. Nobody will be able to hear from him because he's eating his 7th sweet candy since we got on the podcast.
It's more than 7.
Okay.
So Born in the USA was my first ever album that I bought in a record shop called Vibes. I think it was early 85 maybe. And it was Bruce Springsteen, Dancing in the Dark. And it was Courtney Cox video on Top of the Pops. And I went and bought the Bruce album, Born in the USA.
Oh, I love that.
Last week, and then you can go on with the podcast.
Oh, okay. Whenever you're done anyway, Gary, yeah? Coming up on this episode of It's Called Soccer, Gary and I talk about all the news coming out of the Premier League right now.
Is he saying, hang on, give me the length of contract and value in contract that I deserve for what I've done for this club?
The Give and Go guys are back to bring us the very latest on the MLS playoff action.
The MLS playoffs are delivering with non-stop drama.
We have a special interview with the US Women's National Team legend Brandi Chastain.
It's my journey, it's my destiny to make sure that every single person that comes to the stadium feels like they had a personal experience.
And I put Gary under the spotlight on election day.
Imagine Wayne Rooney as the President of America. I mean, that would be absolutely sensational, wouldn't it? Imagine.
It would be gold.
Absolutely.
That is all coming up on this latest episode of It's Called Soccer. Welcome everybody to the latest episode of It's Called Soccer, one in which we have quite a lot, Gary, to get through because there's a lot going on in the Premier League. I don't know about you, but every weekend in the Premier League at the moment seems to be better than the last one. Incredible with both City and Arsenal losing. Liverpool losing at one point, but coming back to win it. And that's, I'm afraid, where I want to start with you, and that's Liverpool, because it's so interesting when you look at them right now, 2 points clear. There seems to be, from what I can see on the outside looking in, Gary, a team in Liverpool that look very free and look quite like they're having a good time, like they're having fun, with not a lot of pressure because there were no expectations. Is that how you see it?
A little bit. I mean, I'm interested to know, because people will say whatever I say about Liverpool, that I'm overcompensating or that I'm being biased. I think it's been an unbelievable start for Arne Slot. He could never imagine that it would have gone as well as it has. There is part of me that still wants to get to January, February. Part of me still wants to see that sort of, if you like, end of the first round of games. Part of me thinks that in the games I've particularly watched them, they were really good at Old Trafford, so I thought they were fantastic in that game. But when I watched them at Wolves, and I watched them in certain, the Chelsea game, I wasn't wholly convinced. They got the job done just like they did against Brighton on Saturday. So they're getting the job done in certain games. But I don't feel like I'm watching a champion team.
But is there a champions team that you are watching? I don't see one.
That's where it comes to. Our Arsenal and City that we think and thought were the best 2 teams in the country, are they going to be as inconsistent for the next 6 months, 7 months? That's why I think Liverpool at this moment, I never changed my predictions at this stage of the season. My predictions were that Liverpool wouldn't even be in the top 4. That has to change, I think, because they've done a far better job of settling Arne Slot in than I imagined and getting over the Jurgen Klopp sort of, if you like, exit. But I do think City and Arsenal will hit their stride at some point, and that they will hit their form. And at that point, they will prove to still be the best 2 teams in the country. So I don't feel like I'm watching a champion team. However, if City and Arsenal, if this is the real City and Arsenal that we're going to see all season, and they're going to be as inconsistent as they have been in this first 10 games, then we could end up with a shot, because they're the only other team really that can win it. But I still think it's an outside bet.
Okay, we're going to touch on City and Arsenal in just a tick. One question about Slot. 8 wins now from his first 10 Premier League games, which is the most by a Liverpool boss in their first 10 top-flight games in charge of the club. Is he sort of the blueprint, the example that everybody should look at for how you succeed a brilliant manager?
Actually, it'd be easy for me to point towards a stable back 5, some fantastic front players, the structure at the club being quite stable and the ownership having a good record over the last 5 or 6 years. But then that was the case at Manchester United in some ways when Sir Alex Ferguson left, they were title winners. So I think it would be too easy just to say that he's been supported by a strong team on the pitch and off the pitch. I think you've got to hand it to him. I think the way in which he's handled the media, the way in which he's handled the difficult questions around wanting to be different but not disrespecting what Jurgen Klopp did, which I think is a fine balance because Jurgen Klopp's a legend obviously in the Premier League but also massively in Liverpool. I think he's just played a little bit of a blinder with what he's done with the players. He's not changed too much, but he's made little adaptations, but mainly off the pitch as well, the way in which he's communicated to everybody. He's brought a composure to the job, and Jurgen Klopp was quite frantic at times, and sort of you just felt the passion sort of burning out of him all the time. But this is a very different approach. It would be wrong of me to say, oh, he had a great team, he had a fantastic team, they were third last year, they've got Virgil van Dijk, they've got Mo Salah, they've got a sporting director and structure that have been there, know the club before. That would all be too easy. I think you've got to give him great credit.
Well, you just named 2 of 3 players that make up another storyline right now for Liverpool. Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold. The talk seems to be the most likely one to go is going to be Trent, with obviously links to Real Madrid. Virgil possibly most likely to stay. I don't know. This is just what I read and what I hear. But Mo Salah is really interesting. 32 years of age, came out on social media after the game and said this: top of the table is where this club belongs, nothing less. All teams win matches, but there's only one champion in the end. That's what we want. Then he said, thank you for your support last night. No matter what happens, I will never forget what scoring at Anfield feels like. I read that and go, leaving. How do you read that?
I thought he would leave about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I didn't think he'd score the goals that he'd scored over this time and be as brilliant as he has. I don't know. Is he sending a message to them because he wants a golden package to stay? And that's him saying, you better value me in the same way as players have been valued in other clubs. I mean, he's got a big wage packet already. But is he saying, hang on, give me the length of contract and value in contract that I deserve for what I've done for this club? And I'm letting the fans know that I'm just not quite happy, but I am happy. You know what I mean? It's a contradiction. But, the idea that I'm happy at this club, but I don't quite feel that something's right. So he may be giving them a message. Trent, he says, the most likely to leave. I can see that. In the sense of, Real Madrid and clubs like that would want him. He's world class in what he does. I think he may feel that his appreciation levels would go up in Europe in certain different types of football than they would in this country. He's struggling to break into the England team in the last 3-4 years. That tells you that there is still a question mark over him. Arne has taken him off in certain games this season, and so did Jurgen Klopp. So maybe he just thinks that I need to, he's obviously, he's been embedded in Liverpool, he's one of their own, but David Beckham was at Manchester United with me and loved Manchester United, his family, his mum and dad, massive United fans, adored everything about the club, but he wanted to explore. He wanted to explore the world, he wanted to explore Europe. And does Trent Alexander-Arnold have it in his head? We know he's friends with Jude Bellingham, with England. We know he's very close with him. Does he feel like, actually, I could stay at Liverpool, I could be a Liverpool club legend, and that's something that would give me great fulfilment, but actually I want to finish my career having had different experiences and almost, if you like, jumping out of the bubble that occurs when, like I did, you stay at your own club all your life. You're in the system and you're in the bubble. So I can see why Trent would want to leave. I know Jamie Carragher says that sometimes that's why you're not a club legend if you leave the club. That's why Steven Gerrard is, and he gives examples of players that are not. I don't think Trent needs to worry about that. I think what he needs to do is worry about what he wants to do in his career. David Beckham is still a Manchester United legend, and he's still a legend in Milan, in Paris, in Madrid, in different parts of the world. I know Liverpool's slightly different, but I don't think he should worry about that. I think he should consider what he wants to do. And my feeling is that he's probably got that aspiration to explore European football and see how that would treat him.
Did you ever have the itch? If somebody had come in for you in Europe, had you ever thought about maybe exploring?
I never once blinked at any point during my career and thought, wow, I want to leave this club. Thankfully, the club never said to me, I want you to leave either. If you think about it, I went to watch United at the age of 5 for the first time. My dad took me and I thought this place was magic. The stadium, the pitch, the red shirts were just literally in my heart. And if you're playing for a club that you feel like that about, and you're winning trophies, and you're playing with your best friends and brothers, everything was perfect for me. But I don't ever look at other players who've left and think, oh, you're wrong because you're not a one-club man.
Yeah.
What I would say is, for me, it was easy. I was loyal because I had no choice but to be loyal, because I had everything on the plate that I wanted. I didn't want anything else. It was there for me.
Yeah, you were fulfilled already. But if I had to push you on another club, if things had been a bit different and you'd had, like, say, Trent, and you'd been offered some of the big names, is there another club? Can you give me the name of a club that you quite fancy a little run out at?
I think that I was asked this question, a club in England and then a club in Europe, and I think in England it would be Arsenal.
Ooh.
I can't play forever for Leeds or Liverpool or City. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen for me. I'm not saying that that's wrong. Again, lads that have done it, up to you, but I couldn't, just where, who I'd supported. But Arsenal is a great club with great tradition that I've always felt when I went to play at Arsenal, particularly when they were at Highbury. I thought it was a very special place. I love Aston Villa, so just purely the ground, again, the history, the tradition of the club. And then internationally, it would probably be, I would say I'd go for Bayern Munich or Juventus.
Okay.
I just feel like I'm not a Barcelona player. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I'm a Real Madrid. I don't think I'm a Real Madrid player. I don't think I'm an AC Milan player. But I think I could play for that Juventus team that I played against. Were a tough back four that was quite solid and rigid, and it was quite tenacious. And I think Bayern Munich have got that element about them as well as a club, that they've got that sort of robustness and power and strength in their team. I think I would suit those two clubs if I was picking. And to be fair, I don't think Bayern Munich or Juventus were ever hovering over me or looking to buy me, by the way. But they would be the two clubs that I'd looked for internationally.
Okay, interesting. Let's get back to domestic matters and get back to Manchester City, because we touched on them earlier on today. Knocked out of the League Cup in midweek, lost against Bournemouth, which ended that 32-game unbeaten run. I think last December was the last time they'd lost a game in the Premier League, which is crazy. The injury situation stuck out to me this weekend, Gary, because Pep Guardiola wants a small squad. That's his decision. That's what he chooses. So how can you then complain constantly, which he did in the build-up to the game against Bournemouth, that they have 13 first-team players out? He constantly talks about injuries, but it's his choice, isn't it? It's his choice to keep that small squad.
Yeah, I said before, the week before, when Arsenal went into the Liverpool game and there was this suggestion that Arsenal had Saka missing, they had Odegaard missing, they had Saliba missing through suspension. I'm not interested. Honestly, I am so not interested in the clubs that have spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds on their squads, who talk about the quality of the squad. Do you know something? I actually think it's an insult in some ways, because sometimes these managers pay lip service to the idea that they believe in their squad, they trust their squad, they trust their academy, they trust their youth players. I had a manager that I played under who truly lived by those words, and he acted on it by rotating players, believing in his squad, playing young players. I think City have got some really special young players. They've got some fantastic players at Arsenal. Believe in them, trust them. Arteta did that, if you remember, a few years ago when he left out Aubameyang and can't remember who it was at the time.
Ozil, I think. Was it even Ozil?
Ozil, yeah, players like. But if you remember, he brought in Smith Rowe and Saka and Martinelli, and he believed in those young players, and it changed the dynamic of, I think, Mikel Arteta's reign at Arsenal. For me now, Arsenal are obviously not getting results because they've got a few injuries. City have obviously had City have been unbelievable, so you're not criticising them wholly here. But what you're saying is, you can go and get results with substandard teams with injuries, and City have done that. They've had no De Bruyne at times, and they've gone and got. So I've got no sympathy for the clubs that at the very top. City will come back. They've had a bit of they looked like they were overrun on Saturday against Bournemouth. They were sloppy in defence. They looked a little bit leggy. Whether it's a permanent thing, I don't think so. I think they'll come back strong. But yeah, they're having a little bit of a testing time, and Arsenal the same. But if you can't win a game with a few injuries, and you can't win a game with 10 men. You can't be a top team, and City knows that, and Pep Guardiola knows that more than anybody. So I don't think he can be whinging too much. Yeah,
they were complaining as well. I think both Arteta and Pep Guardiola after the games that their players were tired, which is a problem at the beginning of November. As you shake your head, Odegaard I think is back in training for Arsenal, so that's good news for them. But Arsenal losing at Newcastle. But actually, I think as big a story as Arsenal losing at Newcastle is Arsenal losing Edu, which came out yesterday. Their sporting director has resigned. This is weird to me. This is weird because he was part of this huge process that him and Arteta were building. This season was almost supposed to be not the end of that, but the culmination of that.
Yeah.
They've struggled a bit in the early stages of the season. Are you telling me that if they were top and clear by 4 points, he would have left? I don't think so. Something's going on. Something has happened from the outside looking in. I can't believe Arteta's happy about it. And the other thing is where he's gone or is going, which we will get to that in a second. But first of all, when you heard that news, That's one of those moments where it stops you a little bit in your tracks, doesn't it?
I agree with you. I agree with you. When something doesn't smell right, and you think if it doesn't smell right, doesn't look right, it's normally not right. And we haven't got the detail. We don't know what's happening completely. We know that obviously he's going to go and work for the owner of Forest and Olympiacos. If I was Arsenal, you'd be asking serious questions how you've lost your sporting director of what is an amazing football club, a club that I've just said is the second club in the England I would play for in terms of history and tradition, to go and work for the guy who runs Olympiacos and Nottingham Forest. Doesn't sound right to me. Now look, it might be a financial package which is just so sensational for Edu that basically he thinks that actually I can't turn it down for my family, but I can't believe he's not earning significant money at Arsenal.
The rumours are triple his wage packet. That's the rumour, triple his wage packet, which is insane.
That's insane. So that might be the thing. It just may come down to money, and it may come down to the fact that he feels like he's taken this Arsenal project as far as he can.
But
how can
he have taken it there in the middle of the season?
If they do win the league this year, he could probably say, I set this up. I was the one who changed the fortunes of Arsenal. I was the one who built the squad with Arteta. So he would still get some sort of credit for that. It's not something that I think will sit well with Arsenal. It doesn't sit right with us, feeling from the outside that it doesn't look right. It looks like something that, to be fair, has something gone wrong. Is there a difference of opinion? Is there a question mark between the manager and the sporting director as to style of tactics, the way in which we're playing, the way in which we're going, not using the squad? Has that conversation happened and they've had to choose one of them? That sometimes happens with sporting directors and managers. None of these may be true, but what it does when you see something as startling as this, it opens the door for these types of questions to be asked and these types of rumours to occur. And I have to say, for Arsenal, it's not good.
Okay, just one last question on Arsenal before we talk Nottingham Forest. Do you think this has the potential, depending on what's happened, to destabilise the club?
Well, it has the potential, of course, because we don't know how important Edu was. I believe Mikel Arteta has got enough about him. I think he's got enough stability there. I think we're not on his back for what's happening in this first few weeks of the season. We think he's done a good job. We think he's made progression over the last few years. He's got a decent character and personality. He's now quite experienced. I think he should be able to see this through to the end of the season and not let it fall, basically sort of slide downhill, which if it did, and there is a risk of that. If they carry on getting the results that they're getting, this is not going to end well, because they have invested heavily in that squad and they're a fantastic team. So I'm expecting Arsenal to start to rise in results and rise in performance levels in this next month or so, and I think then we'll start to forget about this Edu moment.
I lied. I do have one more question about Arsenal. Let's say we get to May and they haven't won the title. Even worse, they finish third. What's the future of Arteta then?
It depends.
On how it ends?
It depends. What if they, for instance, had 5-6 injuries to major players throughout the whole season, as an example? Let's say this continued and Ødegaard, Saka, Saliba got injured, and you'd say, okay, third in a season where you've had injuries, you've got Liverpool above you and you've got City above you. I don't think you'd be sort of changing your manager. If they finish third and they're 25 points behind, they've had all the players available, and you think that they're regressing a little bit, I still don't think you would sack him. I think you'd say, look, what we're going to do this summer to make sure we get back up to number 2 and get that championship that we need so desperately. I think because there has been that belief in Arteta and there has been that progression, I think if he finished 5th, 6th, 7th, like if he went down to that sort of level, which I don't think they will, but if they did, then he would be, I think, under serious pressure.
Okay. Well, the good news for Edu is he's going to a club that are above Arsenal in the league, which is incredible. For the first time since 1998, Nottingham Forest are in the top 3 of the top flight of English football. I don't know about you, Gary, but Forest for me is one of those lovely clubs, just lovely English clubs, which has such a great sort of heritage and history, obviously, that everybody knows about, the back-to-back European Cups. And to see them in the top 3, I just love that sort of refreshing feel to the Premier League after 10 games when you see them up there. Do you think this is one of those Premier League quirks that irons itself out? Or do you, I'm not saying they're going to finish third, or do you think that they can be consistent enough to be the big surprise of this season?
I mean, they're already the big surprise where they are just after 10 games. I think it will definitely balance itself out, and I think they'll finish probably between 8th and 10th in the end. But that would still be an absolute. Yeah. That'd be a great season. But they've got such an exciting. They've got a decent back four, but they've got such exciting players that are in and around Chris Wood. You look at sort of the likes of sort of Hudson-Odoi and Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White, Anderson, the boy Anderson I really like. So if you look at those players that are, they're exciting. They're going to win your football matches if you can get them the ball enough. So I think that obviously they will come back. They will end up finishing out of European places, I think, in the end. If they were to get European places, it would be a fantastic performance. But we need Nottingham Forest in third place. Yeah. The league needs it. We need Bournemouth to beat Manchester City. We need those types of results to continue to infiltrate the league and to sort of surprise us. We need that competitive league that we've always had.
Yeah, and we wish them luck because their December looks tricky. They've got Man City, Manchester United, Aston Villa and Tottenham. So maybe it will even itself out, but we wish them luck because it is brilliant seeing Nottingham Forest so high in the league, their highest position for 26 years. Now it is time to catch up with the Give and Go podcast so they can give us a roundup of everything that is happening in Major League Soccer right now.
The MLS playoffs are delivering with non-stop drama as we see the high-flying LA Galaxy score 2 goals over 2 legs against the Colorado Rapids and advance into the next round.
LA Galaxy and Ricky Pooch look to be the best team in the West with their offense flying incredibly high. And you look at their rivals at LAFC, they found themselves in a really tough game against Vancouver.
As LAFC loses 3-0 to Vancouver, forcing the Game 3 in Los Angeles. That is going to be a must-watch game to see if LAFC can advance into the next round because we've had a big upset happen already with the Columbus Crew getting knocked out against New York Red Bulls.
It couldn't have ended in a more dramatic way for last year's MLS Cup champions as they took New York all the way to penalties in this must-win game. But Carlos Coronel, the Paraguayan goalkeeper for the Red Bulls, showed up big, getting 3 back-to-back saves, knocking the Crew out of the playoffs.
And if that isn't dramatic enough, we have a crazy game that awaits us. Game 3 in Miami, Inter Miami hosting Atlanta United, who just got an incredible result as Xande Silva scores a game winner to propel Atlanta United 2-1 over Messi's team and now pushes them into a do or die scenario.
Yeah, Atlanta United have found excellent form at the perfect time as they've played Inter Miami incredibly well in these 2 playoff matches. They've set themselves up for a must-win Game 3, but it's going to be in Miami. I think it's going to be a really good game. Atlanta United have some very good offensive weapons, but Miami have Messi, and I think it's going to be very difficult to go against one of the best players of all time. But not only that, Miami are the best team in the league. I'm going Miami to beat Atlanta in Game 3.
Is it possible to stop Messi though? I think that's a great question to ask Gary, as Manchester United did face off against Messi in the 2009 Champions League final. How exactly did Alex Ferguson plan to stop him on that day?
Look, it's really interesting because we beat Barcelona in 2008 when Messi, at that time, under Frank Rijkaard as the manager of Barcelona, was playing very much on the right wing. And Patrice Evra was perfect in some ways. He was quick, he was agile, he was quite diminutive himself, so with a low centre of gravity. And we had also Ji-sung Park doubling up with Patrice Evra, and they really did a big job on Messi. And sort of over 2 matches, we won 1-0 over 2 matches. We restricted Barcelona from scoring. I was injured in that part of my career, so I didn't take part in the game, but I watched both games and travelled to Barcelona to watch the game over there as well. And it was really a good job that we did on him. The problem was Pep Guardiola came in that summer and completely transformed Messi's role into that false 9, into that central position where you didn't know where he was going to pop up. So you couldn't really man-mark him. You couldn't really follow him, sort of, if you like, pin him on the side. And that's where he just absolutely destroyed us. I don't think you can stop Messi one-on-one in over 90 minutes. You've got to do that through a collective effort. That's just too good. These players are just one-on-one. They'll just absolutely destroy you.
Great stuff. The Give and Go guys will be back next week with more on the MLS playoff action.
This is an advertisement from BetterHelp. We should never underestimate how important it is to say thank you to those around us and also to ourselves. Today I'm taking a moment to appreciate the people who make a difference in my life, starting of course with Rebecca, and I suppose Jamie too. It's also just as important to say thank you to ourselves. We forget to do it, but we're all doing our best to handle everything life throws at us, and that deserves a bit of gratitude too. Making time for therapy can be a great way to show yourself some thanks. It's not just about dealing with big life challenges, it's about finding ways to cope, set boundaries, and work on being the best version of yourself. BetterHelp connects you to mental health professionals with a wide range of expertise, and you can switch anytime for no charge. It's entirely online and fits your schedule. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. You can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/ICS. That's betterhelp.com/ICS.
Staying with football in the United States, it's now time to bring you part of an interview Gary and I did when we were in New York together recently, and were joined by the US soccer legend Brandi Chastain. We caught up with Brandi in Carragher's Bar, or was it Neville's Bar? No, I think it was Carragher's Bar that day in downtown New York City, but Gary insisted we give it a bit of a Manchester United makeover. The wonderful Brandi Chastain has joined us today. Double World Cup winner, 2 Olympic gold medals as part of the USA women's team. So lovely to have you on the podcast here in New York at Neville's Bar.
This is quite a transformation. I've been in this bar a few times actually.
Why?
To watch Copa America.
Why would you come to Carragher's? You've got class. Yeah. You've got style. You know what I mean?
I was near here. It was the nearest one to where.
The only place you could have basically, yeah.
Well, it's now Neville's, and we're gonna talk about BFC because it's a really interesting part of your journey, Brandi. But your journey encapsulates so many incredible moments, which we're going to touch on. But let's take you back to when you were a little girl growing up in the United States. Soccer, football. How did you get to it? How did it find you? Tell us about your childhood as a player.
Well, the first thing you would need to know is that I grew up in Northern California, San Jose. And I love sports right away. Being physical was probably the thing that got me the most excited. It brought me the most joy. And my grandfather loved golf, so I listened to stories about golfers, and he would take me to Pebble Beach. And my mother loved tennis, so I knew Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert. And neither one of those things were dirty and physical enough for me. So it just so happened that soccer came to my neighborhood when I was about 7.5, and so we signed up.
When you say soccer came to your neighborhood, what do you mean?
Somebody created a league and said we're going to have organized soccer. We didn't know anything about it. Nothing. No, my parents didn't know anything about it.
Was it an English person that came to your neighborhood?
I don't remember that actually. It felt like a neighborhood thing. It was very low level, like very recreational. My father was my coach, and he didn't know anything about soccer. He'd never even seen a match before. And so he was a Marine, so we were we knew push-ups, sit-ups, and run in 2 very organized lines, but family was really the premise for this environment. But I always thought I'd be an American football player, to be honest with you, because I loved playing American football. I loved, the contact that football had. And but then what ended up happening in 1970, in the mid to late-ish 70s, George Best came to San Jose Earthquakes, and that changed my life. And I watched him, and I was glued to my seat. I could not take my eyes off of him. And he just danced around the field, and the ball was stuck to his foot, and he just looked like he made it look so effortless and beautiful. And I was overwhelmed, and I just thought, I'm going to do that.
So I never connected the fact that basically George Best coming to San Jose was the reason that you sort of became inspired by football.
Yeah, it just showed it in this different light. Back in the NASL, they only had to have 2 Americans playing. So there was a lot of international players that I had the luxury of watching. Yeah. I mean, that was Pelé, Beckenbauer, Mueller. I mean, these are players that were world-class players. And And I fell in love. Like, I just wanted to do that. And I went to a soccer camp, and there was 350 boys and 4 girls. And I was like, I am in this. Like, I am going to compete against all of them, and I'm going to crush them. And then we got to play at the halftime. And I scored a goal, and the crowd cheered, and I was like...
Halftime in the actual
In the
game.
actual stadium.
Stadium, yeah.
And it was...
And how old were you at that point?
I was maybe 10.
And did you know there was a pathway? Was there a pathway at that point?
No. No, this is, the first time we met, the light bulb went off for me. I was sitting on a panel with you,
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Serena Williams, Paul Gasol, Mark Messier. I mean, these are legends in their sport. Multiple trophy winners, like unbelievable, right? The best of the best. And I thought, I'm like the black sheep. Because I say that only because it really, it hit me really hard. Like, I grew up without a path. I grew up without an established league. I was a part of the group that made that happen. And so when I think about Bay FC today, I mean, it's very emotional for me. And this is the 3rd iteration of women's professional soccer football in our country. And I think about me as a young kid watching George Best. The girls and boys, it doesn't have to be girls only. It's just the kids that come to our stadium will be exposed to players from around the world and their homegrown players, and they will be as impacted as I was. And that is like the best gift that this opportunity has given to me. Football means so much to me on so many levels for so many reasons that, it's my journey, it's my destiny to make sure that every single person that comes to the stadium feels like they had a personal experience, and that it could be the only time, right, that I meet them or they meet our players, and we better do the best job possible.
Back around that time, a little bit before maybe, so obviously you're aware that in England women were banned from playing football for a long time. My mum got kicked out of the boys football team at school, and she's actually got there's a press cutting of it, a media cutting of it, where basically it made quite big controversial news around the time in the local paper. How were you treated when you were one of 4, and how were the coaching staff, how were the other players, the boys that were in there, sort of with the 3, well, you and the 3 others that basically turned up for that sort of that camp?
Yeah, very interesting question, and I think really relevant for me, because there was not this overt displeasure for us being there, but kind of the side talk, right? We would have a skit night, and they did a really not so nice skit, and I think I was too young to understand it at the time, but now that I look back, I was like, wow, that was really not okay, and none of the male staff, it was all male staff, did anything about it. And so I think nobody really knew how to navigate the space.
What was the skit night? Talk us
Like
through it.
Like a sketch.
Yeah,
What was the sketch though? What was the sketch that upset?
I
What, actually mocking or?
Yeah, like defaming women,
okay.
just like
Taking the mickey.
Playing football or just
No.
generally?
Generally.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think, not right or wrong, good or bad, at the time, women in sports did not have its place as it does now. Like, the roots were not set. And so it wasn't okay, and it would never be tolerated now. And I'm hoping, not even thought about being done, but so I felt like that's where my competitiveness really got its spark. But the gentleman who was running the camp became one of my mentors, and he knew I was better than those kids. And so he put me in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
And he let me just be as wild as I was. I was wild. Like, I would crush I was like Gary Neville, like, I would crush anybody that would come in my area.
You're underselling yourself there.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, when I watch you play, like, I feel like there's this, like, you're never going to beat me, and I will never make it easy on you. And you're going to feel it at the end of the day. You're going to know you met me.
At what point in your journey did you think, was it school or college, where you thought, I'm going to be a professional footballer?
I didn't really think about it until after the first Women's World Cup. Because...
Which was in 1991.
91. And that's because I was playing adult league soccer, which was the gap between playing collegiate and playing on the national team, because at that time, there weren't these big opportunities, there weren't regular matches. Like, honestly, if I was on the national team for 5 years, we might have had 10 games over those times. Like, there wasn't very many matches to be played. So right after I graduated, maybe a year or two, I took an opportunity to play in Japan for a year. And at that time, I was had been cut from the national team, and I was in kind of this limbo between 91 and 96. And I went to Japan, which was honestly, I think, the best thing I could have ever done. I think it's the experience that college brings to a player too, which is, it was a time to mature. It was learning a different language, but not just a language of like what the people speak, but how do they play football? How does it resonate in their culture? You know, what does it mean to them? You know, how can I assimilate into that environment and be better? And so for me, it was the greatest opportunity, one that was really not looked upon very favorably.
96, when the Olympic Games came to Atlanta.
For the first time that women's soccer was ever in the Olympics.
Right, and America won gold. And that was the time where the Mia Hamms and you and that generation started to just infiltrate into the American consciousness, I think. And then it led perfectly up to the 1999 Women's World Cup in the United States. And that, Brandi, is why you are on panels like you were with Gary and Tom Brady and Serena Williams, because of what you did in that moment under that pressure. For anyone who doesn't know, they do know, everyone knows who's watching this, that final in the Rose Bowl, the final was 0-0.
Right.
Extra time?
Yes.
0-0.
And that extra time was very interesting, because at that time it was golden goal.
Oh, was it?
And, and one of the most monumental plays of the whole tournament was Christine Lilly. We gave up a corner. Their attacker out-jumped our defender. And Brianna Scurry, if you don't know, is like phenomenal. She could leap tall buildings in a single bound. Like, she could extend those arms, and her hands were so big, and she could get things up in the corner. But this one was going past her, and Christine jumped behind and saved it off the line. That's so we wouldn't be having this conversation without Christine Lilly. I love you, Christine.
And then it went to penalty shootout, and it got all the way to the winning penalty. For Gary and for everyone watching, that penalty and that moment really changed everything in this country, and it changed everything for you. Just tell the story again of the moment that you knew you were up next.
Well, leading into going to the center of the field, you know, as you have experience, you go to the sideline, you're getting water, you're probably an ice towel, because you know it's 120 degrees in the Rose Bowl. And everybody's just kind of taking a moment, to decompress from what had just happened, 120 minutes of incredible football back and forth. And then our assistant coach came up to me, her name is Lauren Gregg, and she said, okay, you want to take a penalty? And I kind of drew back. I remember thinking, why are you asking me? Because in the run of play, I would have been the person to take the penalty.
So you were the penalty taker?
Yeah, I was
Number one.
Okay. Michelle Akers and I, but Michelle was out of the game. And so I said, yeah, of course. Yeah, and she goes, okay, good. And then she wandered off. Again, drinking, whatever. And then next thing, Tony DeCicco, our coach, our late coach, comes up and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, okay, you're going to take a penalty. I said, yep. I talked to Lauren, no problem, I got it. He goes, okay, you're going to take it with your left foot. And it was like he ran away. Shoo. Didn't think twice about it. Okay.
Hang on. Just for anyone who doesn't know, are you right-footed or left-footed?
No, I'm gonna get to it.
Okay, get to it.
I'm gonna get to it. So then we go to the middle, and because it's like one of those really intense moments, like I missed the order. I didn't hear where my name was in the order. But then we got out there and I was like, well, I don't want to mess with anybody else's process, so I'm not going to ask. So they'll tell me when it's my turn. So, So part of what you need to know about being there for that penalty kick was earlier in the year we had played China in the Algarve and we had a penalty. And when I took the ball from the referee, I placed it down and I looked up and the goalkeeper was standing right there. And she is awesome, quirky character, really fun-loving personality, but she smiled and winked and I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, totally got me out of sorts. And she went back. Referee blows the whistle. I hit the ball. It hits the crossbar, goes out. We end up losing that game. So the only thing going through my head at this time is don't look at the goalkeeper. Don't look at the goalkeeper. 90,000 people couldn't have been any more quiet. Like, it was like deafening. So Brianna Scurry makes a save on the third kicker. I knew we've won. I'm extremely confident, no problem. So I go up, I take the ball, I don't look up, I place it down, I back up, I tap my toe, I wait for the whistle. And I approach it as I would every other day. And I'm gonna put it in the back of the net, and I take it with my left foot. So Rebecca's asking, am I right or left-footed? I'm both, I would say, but I had never taken a penalty with my left foot in a game before. And so for him to ask me, like people like yourself who kind of have been in these big games were like, no way in hell would I ever do that.
Why would the coach ask you?
Because,
I'll tell you to say it with left foot.
So the extra caveat that was really unique about this time in women's soccer, which doesn't happen any longer, unfortunately, I think, is that our practices were open to everybody. They could come and watch all day long. We would meet the people, we would just hang out. It was very, we were selling women's football.
Yeah.
We wanted them to come to see what it was like to be a part of this team.
So there were no secrets, basically?
No secrets, no secrets. And so, in practice we would do it right and left foot, but for him, I think as a coach you worry more because you have no control. And so this was his way of saying like, hey, this is a good plan in this moment. And I trusted Tony because he's the one who brought me back to the national team. If he said jump off that, I would be, I'm going right now. So I trusted him because he changed my career. He changed my position. He brought me back to the team. He wanted to change the way we played as a team. And to me, he was setting me up for success. And he always had been. And so I said, why not?
Did you have the presence of mind in that moment as you walked up to think this could change so many people's lives if I score this? No.
No. Man, are you kidding me? I was thinking, obviously, listen, leading up to that match, also, FIFA, thank you, had the fourth place game right before on the same field. And then Jennifer Lopez came on. And because this game went into penalty kicks, the concert got pushed back, which meant we didn't get to warm up on the field. So now you're playing in the biggest game of your life and you're running in the tunnels of the Rose Bowl, which is historically one of our most important stadiums in this country. Like the history that is there, the importance of its existence is truly, it's critical to sport. But here we are, the water's dripping, the mold and the mildew and to me, that is like what sport is about. Yeah. You're gonna have to be flexible, you're gonna have to be agile. And that's why this team in particular, I believe was ready to win a World Cup because we didn't have it easy. Nobody picked up our cleats, nobody moved the goals, nobody filled the water jugs and carried them out. We did all of that. And that was a part of our character and a part of the culture of that team.
How much do you think your celebration of the winning penalty helped spread what Gary was talking about? Actually, that image, front page of Sports Illustrated, in a museum, that sports bra somewhere in New York, I think. How much do you think that image actually helped carry this wave of excitement and interest?
I think a long way, and not intentionally so, to be honest with you. It was very organic, authentic, in the moment. You've won many championships, so you know that your emotions, you're not quite sure how you will respond. it changed the trajectory of my life. It changed the people I got to meet, like yourselves, and you know, I could talk about soccer in a way that now was, people were like, okay, tell me more, and they'd lean in. Like before, it would be like, foreign sport, not interested. Like, why are you doing that? But it allowed me to sit on the panel with you and to share the story of, you know, what it was like to be a female in a non-traditional, non-American sport with really almost no support. Now, I give US Soccer a lot of credit. They actually were ahead of the curve. And we, because of that, we had a team that could win World Cups and Olympic gold medals. And they absolutely had everything to do with that. And they are also drivers now of, you know, of the change that needs to happen. And you know, one of my former teammates who was a young teenager that I took care of, Cindy Parlow-Cohn, is now the president of US Soccer. So things are definitely, we're going in the right direction. And, you know, history, you know, history is something that when you talk about like the men's World Cup or the men's national team, will they win a World Cup? You know, history is not on our side. No. If you look at the landscape of the rest of the world, and we're ahead of the curve. Yeah. So we are pushing.
Well, you think about the English women's team, and they only really got that same moment only 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I've never been able to ask someone that obviously lives in the US. The US women's national team moment came in 1999, but the English women's national team moment came literally 2022, 3 years later. How do you view that, and how has that happened? I mean, I'm obviously from England, so I'm looking at that and thinking, what were we doing in our country for that length of time?
Women were playing football like for some little club team, not being taken seriously, training on their own, doing whatever necessary to survive.
Is it because we're too obsessed with the men's game in England?
I don't know if too obsessed is
but that's where the energy is.
I think you are a traditional men's football culture, and that's not bad. But the beauty of the world is that it has so much more. I
think there's just been a review done in England around women's soccer carried out by Karen Carney, one of the obviously international players. And obviously there isn't equal pay, there isn't equal facilities, there is a struggle to get appropriate sponsorship levels into the women's game. What would the game need, just generally the women's game, if you could say 3 things? What if you were doing a review for global women's football, what would you do?
I think you named off 3 that right away. I mean, obviously, the budgets of these, you know, for how can we have a professional environment when we're not paying a wage that is above like almost poverty? Like that's where we were. So we're not asking for what Ronaldo's making, you know, but we're asking for a comparable salary or a salary cap. We have a salary cap, which is a non-traditional thing.
You have a salary? No, we don't have salary caps in the UK because of I think employment law. But you have salary caps in the women's game.
Yes, we do. But it's increasing. Okay. So the board is it's going to increase over the years, and so that's a positive. We've gotten away with what we had was a college draft, which is a kind of a historical American thing for all sports. And now the players are going to be a part of where they play. They don't just get shipped off to wherever it is.
What's the budget then? What would the budget be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's not that much. I think it might be $2.5 million. Yeah, which is not very much.
But you have to have a product to support it, right? You can't just give people huge pay rises and not have a product to support that pay rise.
Sure.
So maybe it's just time.
Yeah, it is time. I think there's a formula. The formula will have time as a variable, money will be a variable, talent will be available, location will be a variable, sponsorship will be a variable, media will be a variable. There's a lot of facilities, but those are changing as well. We have just announced we're building a training facility on Treasure Island, which is literally, we are Bay FC, we are literally in the bay.
Treasure Island is the coolest place ever.
Sounds like somewhere I need to go and live.
It's got a 360 view of the bay, and that will be our new home come 2027.
And what would the spend on that be, a training facility?
Yeah, it's probably in the tens of millions. Yeah.
Wow. So a big investment into facilities.
Big. And that's what we have to do. Kansas City Current is the first club to make a women's only football stadium. And so that's where we're going.
And this is the third iteration, as you said, of women's soccer in this country. This will be the last one, won't it? I mean, this is it.
Yes.
Now.
It
got it
will
right.
Be. It will be, yes.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. I want to say to, why it's been successful in our area. Part of the reason is historically, 40% of the national team have come through our area. So they either were born in our, like Naomi Girma and I are from San Jose.
Basically, hotbed of talent.
Or they've come through the collegiate ranks in that area. Yeah. And so we have a big influence. We have a lot of, again, like I said, we've been around since the NASL, so we've had George Best and we've seen football for a long time. And so we feel good about it, and we want it to exist in our community. So that we have a leg up, to be honest with you, in that way.
What have you made of an English coach being appointed as the head coach of the US women's team?
I have no problem with that. I mean, I will say it out loud, and I'm hoping that I will one day be able to be a part of coaching our youth national teams or our women's national team. I've been gifted so many incredible experiences and lessons, and I've played all the positions, and I want to give that back. But when Emma came along, I feel like it was the right time with the right team for the right reason.
What do you mean by that?
So I think that this was a team that was going in a direction that was really not in a positive way. It had key pieces, but just not functioning in the manner that was going to allow it to be successful. Like, I will take Brazil women's national team. No one would refute if I said they have probably the most talent in all the positions in all the players. Like, I'm sure you experienced too, playing against Brazil. But they don't have the structure behind them to make them a world champion just yet. And that was kind of where we were kind of going. And I think that we needed to literally a tourniquet. And we needed to stop what was happening, and we needed to reroute the direction we were going. And I think because Emma has some roots here, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard her say,
She made in America.
I was made in America. Yeah. And that's so foreign for me to hear someone not from here, especially English, to say they were born and made here in the footballing sense. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, I got an opportunity. That's America. Mm. She got an opportunity to be a part of football in a way that she didn't have a chance before. And then when she went back, she had the biggest chance. And she created an environment and a team that stood alone, right? And now there's more competition, Man United, Man City, we see it now. It's bubbling up. But I think because she had that experience and she won championships and she's been around the block, she understands what it's like to be a player who's not getting time or getting some time or needs a lot of attention or doesn't need attention. And she's just has a great personality to be able to manage that and still be confident and humble with who she is.
Before we let you go, we can't without talking a bit more about Bay FC. Was it your chance to get back into the game in a big way when this came along, this opportunity?
I'm not so sure I was thinking of it like that, Rebecca, to be honest. I'm a hometown girl. I grew up 15 minutes from the stadium. I believe in the values and the virtues of this game. I believe it brings us closer together rather than separating us. I think it it gives the opportunity to for open conversation. We can disagree on formations or players, but we can respect one another in this space. So that was really important for me. I think doing it with the 3 other co-founders, Ali Wagner, Danielle Slayton, Leslie Osborne, as former Santa Clara Broncos and former U.S. Women's National Team members, we knew the specialness of our community. And so that was really the initial. And then I think we said, wow, this is a business that can grow. And when we met some female executives and, let's say like women in startups, and they were like, money will be the least of your worries. And we never had the money be least of our worries. We were like, how can that be true? And then we found it out to be, that's not the hardest thing.
Wow.
The business of football is hard. Putting on a match every day or every week is hard. Choosing the right players is hard. Managing those players and getting the most out of them as many days of the week as we can, especially on match day, is hard. But we've done hard before. And our community is about innovation and ideation and creativity and changing the world. And that's who lives in our community. So that's why we thought we could do it.
What role are you playing at the moment in the club?
I'm an ambassador. I get to come and I get to
Do you
spread
interfere
the joy.
though? Are you
No.
She wants to. She definitely wants to. On a Saturday night.
You can't be a co-founder and owner and not interfere a little bit.
You're talking to one.
No, I'm a huge supporter. I'm at every game that I can be home. I am all Bay FC all day, every day. I want the best for the players. I need them to know that I'm there if they need anything. I'm supporting them. But our standards are high.
Yeah.
Like, we are no nonsense, and we don't mind saying it's playoffs.
Yeah.
We have to get the playoffs.
Or you're sacking managers.
And then, no, I'm not a part of that. I'm not any part of that. But we're playoffs. We want to be. That's going to be our mindset.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in that mindset, I know that American sports does not have relegation, which I think is problematic for soccer. I think it's problematic for all of sports, to be honest with you, because no one should ever believe that, we'll get it next year or we'll be there again. Like that's not how we should be feeling. We should be feeling like we are working today to make it to the playoffs, so we stay in this position and we hold this position and we win a championship.
Would you bring relegation in though? Because that's not. I mean, obviously we have relegation in England, and to be honest with you, we think it's the most important aspect of our game because there has to be consequence for losing. Yeah. You can't just have a case where you basically there's no. I mean, obviously you can finish lower down the league and you get less money, but there has to be that fear, that consequence, that sort of jeopardy.
Well, I think that also is a part of kind of your culture.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of disappointment.
Very fearful people.
Yeah, because you don't like penalty kicks. You don't like penalty kicks. And,
You don't like anything.
Yeah,
Walking around shaking.
I mean,
like.
there is a little bit of that. That I've met through my friends. Like they've told me about it. Not you.
It felt like you were talking to me then, Brandi.
No, not you. But I honestly believe that why not have that opportunity we have now another women's professional league that is going on at the same time, and we could do this.
Yeah.
And I think my mindset is, how great can you be? Like, I'm not fearful of the bottom.
No.
I'm not fearful of that because I'm working every day to be great. And that, if we had that type of mindset, we would be better.
Yeah.
That would be
whole thing
amazing.
would be
That would
better.
be amazing if the USL Women's League and the NWSL formed a tier That would be incredible because it would show the jeopardy. It would show everybody, I think, in men's soccer in this country what needs to be done, which we can do another whole podcast on how on earth we get Major League Soccer.
I'm always
to do
conscious of coming over to a country and saying this is how you should do it because it's the same as ours. But my point is, if
it's not just the same as ours, is it? It's the same as everybody.
Yeah, but if you're feeling that as well, obviously live it. That's interesting.
Well, I just think that we're trying to get on the same calendar as the rest of the world. We're opposite, and so I feel like we do things our way, which are fine. Like I'm not bashing us. I think it's really, we have great sporting history and great tradition. In football, we are probably the only place that doesn't do it like the rest of the world. Yeah. And that hurts us. And that hurts when I hear you talking about what are our chances for our men's national team to win a World Cup. That hurts our chances because we're not in sync with the rest of the world. And so we're constantly trying to catch up in things, and so I think it could benefit us, and we shouldn't be afraid of that.
If you could get that sorted by the time we next talk, that would be great. Relegation in the women's game, brilliant. We'll end it there. Brandi Chastain, you've done it all, and we're so grateful that you joined us on It's Called Soccer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I love you.
Thank you.
Really good to catch up with Brandi. You can watch the extended conversation between us. It's going to drop on the US Overlap channel this coming Friday. Now, Brandi talked Gary about how happy and pleased she was that Emma Hayes is the new manager or new head coach of the US Women's National Team. We talked about Ballon d'Or last week, and Emma was awarded the prize of the FIFA Women's Coach of the Year. 2 days later, the USA beat Argentina 3-0. That has stretched her unbeaten run now since taking over before the Olympics to 13. So that's 13 unbeaten, and of course the gold medal at the Olympic Games as well. What a job she's doing. I think completely unsurprising to anybody who wanted her in the role. You know her really well. What do you think makes her such a successful coach?
I think with any coach, obviously just the idea that she knows exactly what she wants. She's a force of nature. Working with her as a pundit on in the major championships for ITV a few years ago, she was actually brilliant company. And I always think managers, I'm a pundit, I'm an analyst, whatever you want to call me, a broadcaster. When you have a manager that comes into a sort of, if you like, a media environment, they talk very differently, they sound very different, they've sort of got an authority about them, or they should have an authority about them, and Emma definitely carries that. I mean, her record's unbelievable. I mean, Brandi obviously as well, who obviously knows US women's soccer far more than I do completely. The way in which that she said that it was a great appointment, the way in which she said that she wants the appointment over there, I wondered whether actually it would be deemed as being as a successful appointment as actually I feel like it is being. It's something that, just appointing a British coach, she's done an unbelievable job at Chelsea, in charge of the US women's team, when the US women's game is far ahead, if you think of the sort of English women's game, in terms of its development and its growth. I wondered whether it would be a success, but it started so well, and that's just purely because of the unique nature of Emma's personality and character. She's an absolute born winner.
America loves that. America loves that. Their next fixture, US Women's National Team, is at Wembley. It's going to be a good one. They're facing the Lionesses, England's Lionesses, on the 30th of November. Right, Gary, we're nearly at the end of this episode of It's Called Soccer, but it's election day in America, which is really rather stressful, I won't deny. Big week of decisions.
That's why I've worn my Bruce. That's why I've worn my Bruce t-shirt.
I know. Look at that. Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen. Right. So, what have you dropped? Have you dropped your headphones?
I've dropped my earpiece.
Oh crikey! Go on, get it.
Here we go. Carry on. Don't worry. I can still hear you.
So, rather, obviously, it's a day of decision making. So we thought we'd end the podcast with a few decisions by you. These are hard questions. You're not allowed to pass on them. I apologise in advance.
Political
All political.
decisions.
The first question is: would you rather have a Chinese takeaway or a chippy tea?
Oh.
Chippy tea, for anyone watching or listening, by the way, I have to explain that, is fish and chips. And it's not fish and crisps. It's not fish and potato chips like Lay's. This is just for the Americans listening. It's fries, but they're thick and chunky and they soak up all the vinegar. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, if I went to the chippy, I would have pudding, chips, peas and gravy, which again will need another level of explanation, I think, over in the... So basically, a pudding is a suet pudding with steak inside it, and then you put gravy over it with mushy peas and chips. Come over to when next time you're over in England.
No, is that the kidney? Do you have kidneys in there too?
Yeah, I don't like steak and kidney pudding. I like steak pudding. So it's like a braised beef inside it. It's absolutely beautiful, honestly. I'm going to go for the Chinese takeaway because I don't like fish, actually, so that's why you said fish and chips. Okay. I'm going to go for a Chinese takeaway because it's a beautiful thing. The idea
What's the order?
of being
What's the order?
So I would have salt and pepper spare ribs.
Right. Dry.
Have you heard of those?
Yeah, I have, but they're a bit dry. I like mine to have a little bit of, sauce on them. So they're
I like... Yeah, I don't like barbecue spare ribs. It's all over your fingers and all over your... So no, salt and pepper spare ribs. Right. I don't mind a bit of chicken and sweet corn soup. I do love prawn crackers. I love Cantonese fillet steak. I do like chips with it, which, going back to your previous statement,
Gary,
is thicker fries. I like Singapore vermicelli, and I do like fried rice.
You've ruined that with chips. Are you a duck pancake man?
Oh, I like duck pancakes.
I love a duck pancake. Okay, I know the answer to this question. Early bird or night owl?
Oh, early bird, definitely.
Yeah. Did you know that I read a book once that said that you are scientifically one or the other? Everybody is one or the other. And basically, whichever one you are, you have to lean into that. So if you are by nature a night owl, stop trying to go to bed at like 9 p.m. because that's just not you. I find that so interesting. And if you think about it, everybody I can think of in my life, it's true. They're either a night owl or an early bird.
I just don't get this idea of staying up watching television till 1 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night, and then getting up at like 9 o'clock or half 9. Look, honestly, I go to bed at 10 o'clock latest. So tonight I'm going to watch Sporting Lisbon and Manchester City. I'm going to look at our new manager, Manchester United's new manager, Ruben Amorim. I'm going to watch the game. I'll be just falling asleep in the last sort of remnants of the match, about 9:45, 9:50 here in Manchester. And then I'll fall asleep and I'll be up at 5. I'll go to the gym and I'm delighted. Do we sound really boring and old on this podcast?
Yeah, I think we are. I think you and I sound like a right laugh. We sound like a great night out, you and I. Okay, win the Premier League or win the Champions League? These are supposed to be quick fire, by the way.
Premier League.
Playing home games, playing away games?
Home games.
Stone Roses or Bruce Springsteen?
But
you didn't wear a Stone Roses t-shirt. That's all I'm saying.
Do you know something? Because the Stone Roses are no longer playing together, but they are like a spirit in Manchester. At this moment in time, Bruce Springsteen is making me seriously emotional. The Road to Diary documentary that came out last week or the week before, the Letters to You album that came out a few years ago, just the way in which his concerts in Europe over the last few years have been sensational. I adore him. He's coming to Manchester next May and I just cannot wait. So I'm going to go Bruce Springsteen. Right. It's tapping into my nostalgic side at the moment.
Winter or summer?
Winter.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want that California. I don't like California stuff. Get me away from there. That's San Francisco stuff.
You're so Manchester. Okay, if you could change or invent one rule for football, soccer, what would it be and why?
I would take timekeeping off the referee and make it more exact. So when the ball goes out of play, the watch stops and then it comes back. I would take timekeeping away from referees. It does seem to be quite random some weeks.
0-0 draws? I know you hate 0-0 draws.
I hate 0-0 draws, yeah. I hate 0-0 draws.
Would you genuinely put it to a little cheeky penalty shootout in the Premier League as a 0-0 draw?
Oh, it's difficult, that one. It's difficult.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Do you know, I don't like stopping the game for substitutions.
Ooh.
I don't like stopping the game for substitutions. I think the idea of rolling subs, yeah, but again, there's complications with that. I don't like the goalkeeper holding the ball. He's supposed to only hold it for 6 seconds. That's the rule in soccer, football. And they hold it for about 10, 12, and it just annoys me every single time. Yeah, there's quite a few things there.
Last question. If you could pick one former teammate, could be England or Manchester United, who'd make a good president of the United States of America, who would it be and why?
Who would be a good president of the United States of America? I should say Tim Howard, really, shouldn't he? He's the only...
He should. He's the Secretary of Defence.
Oh, I'd love to... Well, you remember when I interviewed Wayne Rooney on the Overlap last year, and he said that he basically went to meet Trump
he played golf
at the
with
White
him,
House. He played golf with Trump.
But the maddest thing about it is he had 50 to 100 buggies, golf buggies, behind him, all security. So say the hole's like this and there's a lake, there's a boat on the lake with snipers in the bushes. It's just like, what's going on here?
Imagine Wayne Rooney as the President of America. I mean, that would be absolutely sensational, wouldn't it? Imagine.
And Colleen as the First Lady. It would be gold.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of It's Called Soccer. Don't forget to keep an eye out for the Brandi Chastain extended conversation that drops on Friday, and then we will all be back together next Wednesday for another episode, and we will have another special guest as well. Don't forget, as always, subscribe everywhere. Gary, thank you. See you next week.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.